I am Razio.
Hey, you beautiful bastards. Raziel here again, and in light of this month marking World of Warcraft as lasting twice as long as my failed marriage, emotional damage, I decided that it was definitely time for me to tell the tale of my experience with my love-hate relationship with this game. Though before I dive right into it, let me give you a little bit of background about how I got into MMORPGs in the first place if you're newer to my content. Again, this video is going to be more of a talking head video with just some eye candy in the background. Anyway, I've been an avid gamer since my first console as a kid, which was an Atari 2600 that my mom got at a yard sale. In that moment, I was just hooked on gaming, playing, good old-fashioned tanks and shit. Well, it completely mesmerized me, and between playing that and my cousins and my friends' Nintendo Entertainment System, I just couldn't get enough of gaming. And for those of you who grew up in the 80s and 90s, a lot of your friendships were based on what consoles your friends had. Now, my first RPG was Zelda on the NES. This then led to Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo when I eventually saved up and bought one of those. And of course, Final Fantasy IV for the SNES as well. Once I played Final Fantasy IV, I knew the RPG genre was my shit, and it always would be. I fell in love with all things like fantasy, and it's no surprise that not long after I got into The Hobbit, and then I also got into Lord of the Rings after. Those books and the cartoons about those, thanks to my older brother introducing them to me. And I could think of nothing that would be more cool than when the internet became a thing to experience epic adventures online with friends, kind of a la Lord of the Rings style. But the closest thing I got to that for a long time was MUDs, or MUDs, which my uncle introduced me to. Now, MUDs, for those of you who don't know, were the first MMOs, but they weren't graphical or visual. Everything was red, and the areas you were in and the monsters you fought were all described to you via text, and you would have to type the commands that you wanted your character to do. And this was all done on the Telnet program that came default to like Windows 3.1, Windows 95, Windows 98. And to me, this shit was mind-blowing at the time. I remember being invited to a clan, and being the huge noob that I was, I proceeded to steal all the items from the other players in my guild while their characters were quote-unquote sleeping, which means they were logged off. And then when they logged in, they hunted me down and killed me and kicked me out of the guild. It was it was good fucking times. It wasn't until much later, when I was a sophomore in high school, that I saw that the game Middle-earth Online was being developed by Sierra Studios and was poised to release in 1999. Now, this is not to be confused with Lord of the Rings Online. That's something completely different. I was ecstatic. The game was going to have permanent death, real-time travel times. It would, take days to travel to different locations in the game and shit. I was just stoked, even though I didn't realize how unrealistic all of these kinds of goals for an online game actually were. But I just ate that. I ate it up. I was naive. Unsurprisingly, the game was canceled. I was heartbroken. And then I remember a few weeks after the cancellation was announced, I headed over to a friend's house. His mom said he was downstairs playing video games, so I went down to see what he was doing. And I saw him playing on his PC, and it was a third-person game. He was running around, like, fighting monsters and stuff. And I asked, hey, what game is this? And he said, Asheron's Call. It's like that Middle-earth Online game you wanted to play, but just not set in the Lord of the Rings universe. I sat there for like 4 hours and just watched him play, and I knew I had to get this game and join in on this damn adventure, man. I mean, at the time I was 15, 16-ish, and I was a fast food employee in high school at the time. So I proceeded to beg my mom to allow me to get an extra phone line installed for my computer so I could, be online without taking up the phone line. That was back in the dial-up days. And also for her to use her credit card for the monthly subscription, and I just paid her back for both of those. It took a lot of work and finessing, but she eventually agreed, and since, I was paying for it, just with her stuff, and man, I fell in love with that game. For those of you who don't know, Asheron's Call was one of the OG sandbox MMOs, completely open world, no instancing, no quest hubs, just fighting and surviving. It was a fucking magical game, magical time for the genre. And the only other MMOs at the time that were on the market that were successful were Ultima Online, which came before, and EverQuest, which released about 6 months before that, if memory serves, 4 or 6 months. But I put so many hours, and I have so many great memories of that game and that I experienced over the next few years in Assurance Call, until eventually I switched and played Dark Age of Camelot. Now, to be fair, at this point in my life, I played almost every MMO that's ever been made, but I digress. After that, I played some Final Fantasy XI, and then I saw the first trailers for World of Warcraft, an MMO set in Warcraft's universe. I mean, Diablo's universe probably would have been better, but damn, I was excited. Warcraft 1 and 2 and its expansions had been huge for me growing up, and playing an MMO set in the same world was just something I couldn't pass up. A close friend of mine got a beta key at the time in early 2004, if I remember, and he really wasn't interested in playing, so he gave it to me, and my mind was blown when I first stepped into the world, though. At first, the cartoonish nature of the graphics and everything didn't really jive with me because I was used to games trying to go closer to photorealism, but I was blown away by the combat responsiveness and the server tick and the depth of the skill trees and just how smooth the game played, and exploring all those areas that I had gone through in Warcraft 1 and 2. It was just amazing to me. Later that year, I was saving money for college, working as an overnight shelf stocker at Walmart, when 2 days before the launch, a pallet full of copies of World of Warcraft arrived in the store, and I told my manager that I wanted to buy one at the end of my shift, to which he replied, "Just go ahead and take one." He didn't care. So my coworker, who was an old high school friend, each of us took a copy and one extra one for our other friend that was back in our hometown. And we went and installed it 2 days before its official launch. So we were just waiting for the servers to come up. Now, once they did, what would happen over those next few days was nothing short of amazing, revolutionary, and also very frustrating. At WoW's launch, the servers were overwhelmed, and logging on to play was near impossible, let alone staying connected for very long. World of Warcraft had broken sales records and had more players than Blizzard had ever hoped to even anticipate getting. And as time went on, the servers did become more stable, and it became very evident to everyone that this game was a revolutionary force to be reckoned with. I can't even begin to tell you all the great memories and stories that I think of when I think of when I was playing OG Vanilla WoW. I mean, a ton of friends were made, ridiculous shenanigans took place, talking in the Barrage chat, just trolling, world PvPing, and I don't regret a single minute I spent during those days when I was pretty much no-lifing the game. I mean, I wasn't a raider at the time because for most of the lifespan of original WoW, I didn't even know raiding existed, and I wasn't a god at the game by any stretch of the imagination at all. Most people back then sucked, myself included, but man, I was dedicated to becoming really good and recognized in the game. You know, back when MMOs had a server reputation to uphold. Rest in peace. But a few months before Burning Crusade released, I had quit the game as college had become increasingly time-consuming. However, a few weeks after the release of Burning Crusade, I experienced a very traumatic breakup with a girlfriend, and outside of my studies, I needed something to bury myself in so I, could refocus and recover. And I saw Burning Crusade at the local Walmart, decided it was a good time to come back, and this literally saved my sanity. I went more balls deep into Burning Crusade than I had in any MMO up to that point, including OG Vanilla WoW. I ended up in the American third-rank guild to kill Illidan, and I was a warlock class officer, and raiding at that point had become an obsession of mine. And all in all, WoW's first expansion, Burning Crusade, was a magical time that really kept me from doing stupid things in my life and getting into trouble out of pure, pain and misery. But after college, I was living in an apartment in the city nearby me, the biggest city in my state, with 2 friends, and my life pretty much consisted of going to work and gaming. I had started to log in less often, though, into WoW because my guild stopped raiding due to very little interest in clearing Sunwell, because at the time it was very difficult. And I didn't really mind. I was just fresh out of college, trying to find my way in life, what I was doing. and, you know, just figuring things out. But then Wrath of the Lich King was announced, and I remember flipping out, standing in line at my local GameStop at midnight to get the game in the freezing ass cold. And I got my copy, and I rushed home and installed it and started playing. Now, I was looking forward to Wrath so much because it was the expansion that allowed you to play the Death Knight class, and the class that I had been wanting to play since WoW was even announced in 2004. I mean, I made an Undead Warrior as my main in vanilla WoW because it was the closest thing to a Death Knight when the game launched. And now my true desires are finally coming through. I mean, it's the class I've mained ever since. I've been a Death Knight main since Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath was a very mixed but magical time for the game, when a lot of great things came to the game, but let's be honest, it was also the beginning of a lot of things that would ultimately lead WoW's design down a terrible path, such as looking for group queues, loss of realm reputation and identity was going down, you know, server transfers and all the name changes and all these things starting to come in the expansions afterwards. Blizzard doing things they said they would never do, but anyway, the biggest one was obviously Activision acquiring Blizzard during this time, and it was no coincidence that all that shit started to line up. But it was also the time that I made another terrible life decision, and I got married at age 26 to a severely mentally unstable woman. Yeah, fuck me. Anyway, throughout the next few expansions, from the strong start of Cataclysm, which eventually puttered out with the god-awful Dragon Soul raid, and the fun raids of MoP, and the perfect PvP balance of MoP, and the utter disaster that we pretend didn't happen, Warlords of Draenor, I had a very off and on again approach to playing World of Warcraft for those years. I met a lot of great friends that I still talk to, and a lot of dickheads that were, you know, wastes of space, but WoW overall was the game that kind of lost its appeal to me because of the poor design decisions. But somehow, after a while, I would always feel that tug to come back each expansion. Legion really brought back the hype for me, and I really enjoyed my time in the game. In fact, Legion releasing was what inspired me to start my YouTube channel years ago. But at the end of the first raid tier, I just wasn't feeling anymore, mainly because of all the problems that I knew would rear their ugly heads. For example, legendary items, the artifact weapon system, and all the other borrowed power shit systems they added in the game. They all really turned me off. And not to mention, there was a lot of carrying shitters in my guild as a raid leader at the time, which, you know, I've been many times throughout my, you know, gaming career, as you call it, on WoW, and it really burned me out. And at that point, I thought I was permanently done with WoW. And I was playing other games at the time too, like Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, etc. I would pretty much try any MMO that came out. I completely bypassed Battle for Azeroth, didn't give two fucks about it. It was the first WoW expansion I didn't pre-order or play when it was launched. I just didn't feel the pull anymore. However, when I saw the announcement for Shadowlands, you know, being an edgelord as all my stream watchers call me, my interest was piqued again, because it's very Death Knight themed, and I was in the process of recovering from a divorce. Don't feel bad. It was a great thing overall. Really good for my life. And I finally had the time and peace and quiet to dedicate to an MMO again. So I entered in Battle for Azeroth at its very tail end when corruption was a thing, which was a fun but really stupid mechanic / system. And prepped with my real life friends that were interested in coming back and guildmates for Shadowlands. Now, Shadowlands was a fucking failure, and for the same reasons that Battle for Azeroth and other expansions previous were. The classes were becoming too homogenized, and above all else, the borrowed power systems and legendaries being a must for all specs completely ruined the game for me. Especially when you knew going in that all the effort and work that you're going to put throughout the expansion would just be deleted and removed at the end of the expansion. Not only that, but your class would essentially not function at all once those borrowed power systems were no longer in the game. However, the winds seem to be changing. Some will say it's because Microsoft is acquiring Blizzard, or perhaps because Blizzard hired a team of ex-MMO developers from games like Lord of the Rings Online, Assurance Call, Dark Age of Camelot, the original EverQuest. And while this can't be a bad thing, because Blizzard can't get much lower, I don't think it's had the effect on the game design yet. It's too early. But where I think things really were forced to change for Blizzard this time around is when Blizzard saw the reception its player base had for the releases of WoW Classic, Classic BC, and Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Players clearly liked the design of the game much better back then, and the classes were way less homogenized, and I think Blizzard finally learned that nobody wants this borrowed power bullshit, and the cardinal lesson that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is why I'm excited for Dragonflight and more hyped for an expansion of WoW than I've been in a long time. I think WoW is finally taking a few small steps in the right direction. We're seeing no new borrowed power systems, the return of loot that isn't stuck in personal loot mode, the return of builds and talent trees that don't get completely deleted at the end of the expansion, completely overhauled professions to make them more impactful and important again, and there's a bunch of other stuff as well. I won't go into all the details of all the changes. To pretty much wrap up, without a doubt, World of Warcraft has played a massive role in my life. And while the game has changed a lot over its 18 years since launch, and it's easy to blame Blizzard devs who did make some pretty terrible decisions for the state of the game has been in for so long, the fact is that as much as the game has changed, I have changed a whole lot more. I was a 22-year-old kid when World of Warcraft released, and now I'm near 40-year-old jaded asshole. I know that no MMO will ever give me the same feelings I got the first time I played Asheron's Call, and I'll definitely never re-experience all the great memories I made in World of Warcraft, and that's okay. I'm excited to see what the future of WoW holds, and also excited to see where the MMORPG genre as a whole goes in the future. Ultimately, I am so grateful for all the experiences I've had and memories I've made in World of Warcraft. The game really helped me when life carried out its basic task of kicking all of us in the fucking teeth, and gave me a world to retreat to when I needed it, and friends and experiences and wonderful memories. You know, through heartache, through pain, through so many different things, as I'm sure many of you guys can identify with. All in all, I don't regret playing this game for as long as I have, and now that World of Warcraft is officially old enough to be an adult in the United States, happy birthday to World of Warcraft, and here's to hoping Dragonflight isn't a huge piece of shit. And that pretty much sums up my 18 years in World of Warcraft. Obviously, I couldn't get into a lot of details. This video is already long enough, but now you kind of know where I'm coming from. What I'm more curious about now is where you are coming from. So if you stuck to the video all the way to this point, I really, really appreciate it. Hit the like button if you liked it. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down button. That's fine. I don't give a shit. But anyway, guys, down below, comments about your experience with World of Warcraft over the past 18 years. Good, bad, off and on, good memories, anything down below. I'm always interested in hearing your stories about the same topic. Keep in mind, guys, I am streaming now on YouTube as well, though the streams are mostly Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. Mountain Time here on YouTube. Come in, come hang out, come shoot the shit. Always interested in debating topics regarding not just WoW, but all MMORPGs. We have some fun times here. But anyway, guys, thanks for sticking through to the end. And as always, my friends, keep it real.